Hello, my name is Malik Tassi. In this short video, I will be sharing the results of my research on applying the Marxist literary theory to two great classic works of literature, Hamlet by William Shakespeare and The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The Marxist theory gets its name from Karl Marx. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto and is known as the father of communism. Karl Marx says that all of human history is essentially about the struggle between the haves and the have-nots, more formally known as the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. The bourgeoisie are the owners, creators, and manipulators, and are the upper class of society. The proletariats are the workers and the lower class of society. The Marxist theory argues that a society's social and political conditions are defined by wealth. Marxists believe society is propelled by its economy and is always manipulated by the upper class. The elements of the theory. The elements of the Marxist literary theory that we will be focusing on when evaluating the novels are three. Number one, the constant class struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. Number two, the exploitative hegemony of the dominant ruling class. And number three, that social and political values in society are determined by wealth and status. Element 1. The constant class struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. In the novel The Great Gatsby, this endless class struggle is explored by focusing on how the rich upper-class characters live, such as Tom and Daisy Buchanan, versus how the poorer working-class characters, such as George Wilson and Myrtle, live. The upper class, or the bourgeoisie, live very comfortably, hardly ever needing to work and spending all their time with leisurely pursuits, such as traveling the world. The lower class, or proletariats, work incredibly hard every day in order to survive. They are looked down upon by the bourgeoisie and not valued at all. The author, Fitzgerald, makes it very clear that in this 1920s American society, there is no social mobility. The final fates of George, Myrtle, and Gatsby hit home the point that there is no real possibility of social mobility. Although Gatsby and Wilson worked hard their entire lives, they suffered the same fate at the metaphoric hands of the wealthy upper class. These wealthy people believe they can do whatever they want without suffering any consequences. They are mostly careless and selfish, and hide in the safety of their wealth. Gatsby's individual struggle. Jay Gatsby, a proletariat who managed to become rich, has an individual struggle to be socially accepted by the upper class. To win over his true love, Daisy, Gatsby needs to break down the class barrier and move his way into the upper class bourgeoisie. Although trying to change his own individual position, Gatsby does not really develop class consciousness and does not work for the uplifting of the proletariat class he came from. Instead, he only tries to be accepted by the other. As the Marxist theory suggests, however, the lower class who try to rise up and be accepted by the upper class will always fail, as Gatsby himself does. This is very much consistent with the Marxist theory we are applying. Hamlet. In Shakespeare's most famous play, the bourgeoisie are represented as the court ruling class, and the proletariats are represented as those that work for them in the wider population of Denmark. The established medieval autocracy is represented by King Claudius, and he is pitted against the new Renaissance ideals represented by Hamlet. In the play, characters like Horatio, Bernardo, and Marcellus are considered lower class compared to those of the court royalty, and are never really able to express their own voices. They are constantly being told what to do by the higher members of the court. The exception to this is Hamlet, who treats them as peers and friends. Although stemming from the ruling bourgeoisie, Hamlet is different than most in his class because he does in fact care about all people in Denmark, including the proletariat commoners. This love is reciprocated and they love him for it. Element 2. The exploitative hegemony of the dominant ruling class. Tom exploiting others. Tom Buchanan, the most obnoxious of the dominant class in the text, is constantly physically and verbally exploiting all those he considers below him, for example Myrtle, Wilson, and Gatsby. He expresses this through verbal abuse to Wilson and Gatsby, and his physical exploitation through Myrtle. Tom views everyone that is below him as inferior. Tom believes he is at the top of the chain and no one can be above him. He constantly taunts Gatsby and judges him from the moment he meets him. As soon as readers meet George Wilson, Tom insults his intelligence and ability to perceive things. Tom also exploits Wilson's vulnerability by identifying Gatsby to him, leading to Wilson murdering Gatsby, while Tom's hands remain clean of the crime. The exploitation of Gatsby. Jay Gatsby, although very wealthy and superficially liked by all, is operating as a criminal and does not legitimately own his own means of production, which is important to note in Marxist analysis. Hence, Gatsby is never truly respected and will remain stuck in the proletariat class. We see this when he ultimately fails in his goal of winning over Daisy and being accepted by the bourgeoisie. The exploitation done by the upper class is enabled by a mentality of being uncaring towards anything that does not directly affect them, their wealth, or their status. This is shared by almost all bourgeoisie in the novel. Gatsby is also metaphorically exploited by the mirage of the American dream that can never actually be achieved. Claudius's exploitation. Returning back to Hamlet, King Claudius represents the exploitative actions of the dominant ruling class. He is a powerful and abusive ruler who will do anything to gain and retain power in his hands. He shows this time and time again, when he poisons his brother, marries his deceased brother's wife, exploits Laertes and Polonius leading to their deaths, and ultimately poisons his nephew Hamlet. King Claudius represents the tyranny of the bourgeoisie of Denmark, and constantly exploits everyone around him without a care of the consequences to them. It should also be noted that many upper-class nobles are more than willing to suck up to Claudius, even in his tyranny, for their own personal benefit. Hamlet, the bourgeoisie who refrains from exploitation. Hamlet, although heir to the throne of Denmark, does not exploit those below him like his uncle does. He is seeking to avenge his father and fix the rot in Denmark, not seeking personal power over the working people. He respects the people who work hard to earn a living, and does not use his power to take advantage of anyone. Because of the respect he shows, the common people love and support him. Element 3. Social and political values in society are determined by wealth and status. Gatsby's social and political value. In the 1920s America portrayed by Fitzgerald, without old money status and wealth, you have no political or social value. Much of Gatsby's struggle to obtain Daisy stemmed from the difference in social and political value between him and the bourgeoisie. This explains his inability to marry Daisy, Tom winning her instead, and Gatsby not being able to win her back. Since Gatsby's wealth does not come from old money, he cannot be accepted by people like Tom or even Daisy. Even before Tom meets Gatsby, he assumes the worst and calls him a bootlegger. The upper class all share similar personalities and attitudes with each other, especially in relation to the working class. This Marxist element also explains one of the most powerful symbols used in the novel, the green light. For Gatsby, the green light symbolizes money and the American dream, which will enable him to change his social class and recapture Daisy from Tom. This light fails him in the end. 1920s. The world of 1920s America is a society that gives privilege to those of wealth and status and deprives those who do not have it. Gatsby is driven to participate in the criminal world to accumulate wealth in his attempt to increase his status and value in society. The impact of one's voice in this time is based off their old money wealth and status. In the 1920s, old money defines your social and economic status. Hamlet's kindness. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, the lower class are silenced and are not given opportunities to express their thoughts. Hamlet is different because he does not ignore or silence those around him of lower status and less wealth. He even consults them on counsel and listens to their opinion. An example of this is Hamlet's relationship with his friend Horatio. Hamlet sees Horatio as a peer and best friend, although he is socially lower than him. He constantly asks him to help him in his mission and trusts him with his life. Well, we have made it to the end of the analysis. We have applied the Marxist literary theory to two great classic works of literature, Hamlet by William Shakespeare and The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, using these three elements. To close things off, I have written a short rap as my conclusion to drive home the main points. Enjoy, and thank you for listening.
Marxist is the lens that we use to see, to analyze great novels Hamlet and Gatsby. Class defines worth by royal decree, cause cash rules everything around you and me. Today we looked at the Marxist theory and used it to analyze the Great Gatsby. We also analyzed Hamlet as much as it be. By looking at some elements, there were three. There's great depth in the Great Gatsby, the social economic gap in imagery, proletariat versus bourgeoisie. It's a very present idea, it's easy to see. Individuals are wholly defined by wealth. Lower classes are exploited, yeah, they need some help. Gatsby couldn't accomplish what he wanted to do. He could never have Daisy, and that's the truth. Empty funeral, it was truly sad. He could never truly move across the social gap. His proletariat background keeps him trapped. The upper class dominates, and that's a fact. Hamlet, the play about revenge. Marxist ideas have a lesser extent. Class is represented by a royal decree through Hamlet, who works to make the people free. King Claudius does evil to secure his reign, always manipulating for his personal gain. Would do anything to keep king as his name. The rotten state of Denmark, Claudius is to blame. Hamlet, although stemming from the same class, acts differently, working hard for the mass, values those around him, and that's his mark, working only for the common people of Denmark. Marxist is the lens that we use to see, to analyze great novels Hamlet and Gatsby. Class defines worth by royal decree, cause cash rules everything around you and me.